Royce, welcome to the Mere Mortals podcast. Cheers for joining us.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
So look, man, there's a lot of questions that I have in mind that I want to ask you today, but we're always going to start with the why. I did this with Jack, did this with Will as well. I want to kind of find out from you, why CrossFit? I know you got a bit of a background in AFL and tennis as well in the past. So 2012 came along, CrossFit sort of started being in your horizon. What got you into it? Why continue it?
So yeah, I was started with AFL. I was like into team sports growing up, as I think most people in Australia are, in school and stuff. And when that kind of ends, when school ends, and this is kind of a bit of a, not to get super deep too early, but this is kind of like a thing about the kids in CrossFit now. It's like there's very little opportunities for the rest of your life apart from school to do like really well organized team sports. It's something that people should do a lot of, and CrossFit can be around that. But keep kids in team sports as long as possible, even if it's an individual sport, but they do it in a team, like things like tennis, for example. So because once that ends, it kind of ends, and if you've ever been a part of a social like touch footy, fixtures with adults, you can see how impossible it is to get people to like turn up at the right time, and all of a sudden, so you really lose that magic when you get older. And similar thing, like you graduate school and you don't really have that competitive scratch on the itch anymore. And so I got into like normal gym, and I went on to be a PT, and I was working in gyms and doing like your bro stuff, and just like exercising, as they say, as opposed to doing a sport. And then CrossFit as a style of training was just, as I just found it by accident, it was just fun. It was just like the routine. Yep. More athletic elements, like combining all the different skills and not just doing the same kind of routine. And then from there, what kind of blossomed into it was, obviously there's a great community behind it, so you kind of feel like you're hanging out with a squad every day when you do the class. You get to know the people in your class timetable a bit better, and every day can be like a little mini game where you're trying to compete with your buddies and get the best times, or improve your skills somehow. A win can be different from just winning the workout. It can be getting your first muscle up or whatever it is. And then, of course, from there, through the community, discovered there's CrossFit Open, and there's a literal sport behind it. Yep. And that got me scratched that itch, as I said earlier, of that competitive bug that I hadn't been able to find since high school, not well. And just, I was lucky enough to be good at it, blessed enough to be good at it.
Was it a case, though, that you had the competitive bug all the way back from high school, and this eventuated and you went, oh, this is something I can compete in? Or did you go in already thinking like, oh no, I can see there's a competition around this, I just want to go in as hard as possible?
It's probably a little bit of both. I guess there must be some element of the nature there. I probably have a competitive streak in me, but when I was a kid, I was a bit of a shy kid, and definitely not as outgoing as I am now. And I wasn't super competitive as a kid. I wasn't like a go-getter. I was definitely like, one of the more grey members of the team in team sports, where I just wanted to like sit at the back and just not get noticed and stuff. So definitely, like, as my confidence grew as I got older, and just as you grow up and develop, like I was probably a late bloomer as far as like socializing, and I definitely didn't become as extroverted as I am until later in life. And then the competitive bug, I think, just grew. And there's an element of fun with it too, right? Like there'd be very few, unique individuals in the world who are just purely driven to be champions. Like I think about Muhammad Ali, for example, who's someone who's like, who's famous. One of his famous quotes: "I hated training, I hate every day of it, but I thought go now and be a champion." Like, so that's a special mentality. I think most people who are competitive, it's tied strongly to fun. I've heard all the top CrossFit athletes, like your Matt Frasers, your Rich, even Tia, I talked about how they'll keep doing it as long as they enjoy it, and they happen to be good at it, and they want to win, obviously, and they're competitive. And I'm in that camp too. I think like it's fun, and so it's easier to be competitive, and it makes it when you don't win not as devastating, because you're still like having fun doing what you love. So
that's true. A question on that though. Not even to challenge, but just as an idea. So you mentioned sort of the Rich, the Matts, the Tiers, and they sort of say, we'll continue this as long as it's fun. But there's also a case that they are also the very best in what they're doing, whether it's in the teams, in the individuals, and it's almost not even an unquestioned that they're going to win, but man, they're going to be real damn close. Do you think it's the same thing all the way down the roster with everybody else, where if they had a mentality where, no, I'm just going to keep doing this while it's fun, even though you're coming 25th, 30th in the world, is that going to be enough? Because at the end of the day, the monetary stuff that's going across right now in the games and broadly in CrossFit, sure, if you're in the top 5, cool, you can make a living. If you're in the bottom 20, you better be doing something else to actually make it happen. So yeah, how much do you think it's a bias in the winning there versus the reality of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rich has said this. I don't know if he said it publicly, but he's definitely said it like tongue in cheek of like winning is fun. Obviously, like, you know, it's easier to have fun when you're winning. Easier to have fun when you're winning. And I'd say to answer your question, it's probably a mixed bag. There'd be some people who are only going to win, like, they're like, you know, it's not fun to come 10th or whatever. And people talk about it all the time, like the champion mindset of like, it's not fun to go and come 5th. Like, you know, what's the point? Like, I wasted a year. I want to win and as you say, like, get success and, you know, make a living out of this, or it's not worth it. And then then there's people who, you know, and I think of like, there's some famous names. I think like probably China Cho is a great example. I know her personally of like, she's been like, oh man, it must be like 8 or 9 years now she's made the game, but she's a perennial competitor, and she does it. And she, you know, basically her and her husband just recently like sold their gym and moved from California to Maui, so they're like fully, you know, they have a life outside the games that they're pursuing and kicking their goals. She's not, her 10-year 5-year plan doesn't rely on her winning the games. She does that for fun. Like, it's just one of the things, and that's why, you know, this year she didn't qualify because it was a big year for them, and just training had to come second. It wasn't that big a deal for her. Like, I'm sure she was disappointed, like, because she has that mindset, but you know, she's still living her best life, and her and her husband are still in track with their life plan. So it's like, it doesn't crush you as much because it really was just for fun. And so I try again next year. And then of the people who are like only going to win, there's two camps. There's a camp that believe they can, and so they'll keep trying and they'll come back, you know, for many years, or the camp that maybe doesn't think they can, and so they call it after a few years. It just comes down to what are you sacrificing and how much of it. Like, if it's worth the trade-off and you can balance a lot of things in your life, you can still run a gym and still, you know, a lot of athletes own a gym, then that'll work. If it's costing too much of your life and of your family, and you don't see the possibility of winning, then I guess you call it a day. So, and still, you can still make a name for yourself in the sport as a coach or as a programmer or someone. Like, there's more, you know, there's a whole ecosystem behind the sport, and CrossFit's got so much more room to grow. You know, we need people who are decent athletes, and when I say decent, I mean like, you know, elite, go to the games. We need people who are top level athletes to get into coaching and programming and stuff, because they're just laying the foundation for the next generation. You see that in big sports like golf and football and stuff, and in CrossFit needs that. Like, there's only one winner, sure, but there's a whole lot more that goes into the sport that I would consider successful than just winning. But sorry, to circle back to your question, there is obviously a point where the fun doesn't cut it anymore. But that comes down once again to like a priorities thing. Like, if you can make it still work and you're having a good time and it's not really costing you, or it's adding to your life in some way, then I think you just keep going back until you literally physically can't make it anymore. And if it's costing too much of your life and you have other things that, you know, fun is a funny word. Like, you could almost substitute fun for priority. If there's other things that are more important to do, then obviously the game's quote unquote isn't fun anymore. It might still be like enjoyable, but it's like not fun to be sacrificing in other areas. And that's where Rich is coming up to now, as his language has changed a lot in the last few years, as he is getting older and he's reaching the end of his tenure. You know, what's left to prove or do, and he loves competing, he loves the fun of it, but he also loves his kids, and they're getting older now where they want to do sports, and
of course.
You know, and so all of a sudden it's like he's like thinking, it's not that fun to spend 2 hours in the barn, you know, when an hour and a half is all he needs to be like fit and feel like he's trained, like just for his own emotional health and physical health, and then go and hang out with his family the rest of the day. Well, but he said himself at one of his seminars recently, like that it's that second session that he's doing because he wants to be competitive, and that's the time when you're like, I'd rather be with the family, and so all of a sudden it doesn't seem as fun anymore, and that's when it's time to, like, you know, as his direct quote I think was right off into the sunset, and I think that's beautiful. Like, right, that's it. Exactly, that's what it is. It's like you're not really. You're still not losing it. You're just not prioritizing it anymore.
It just changes.
It just changes. And the goals change.
And now personally, I mean, you pointing it back to what you said already about sacrifice, right? So you've got 3 young ones at home, 2 little boys, and 1 very small girl who just came through the world recently. You came first in Australia, right? At Torian Pro this year.
Yes. Yep.
And 16th in the CrossFit Games. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So that, for all standards and purposes, right? That's like amazing, right? Winning, you know, fittest men in Australia, and also being in the top 20 at the CrossFit Games, that is no small task. But again, as we were just mentioning, if you're not in the top 5, you know, from the monetary perspective of a CrossFit Games, okay, it's not there. There's obviously some other passion, some other joy that you're doing to help you out.
Yes.
How do you go about balancing the sacrifice? I know you're very much a family man. How do you go with that sacrifice now, personally, to make that decision to go, okay, I'm going to dedicate those extra sessions. I'm going to go overseas and take that extra time to be away from the family, to go and prioritize that? So sort of how does that play in your mind, the current decisions?
It really is like a constant, it's almost like if you think about being a professional athlete as being a job, and in a normal job you'd have KPIs and quarterly assessments, and it very much there's that, whether it's not super official and well like planned like a normal job, but there is that kind of informal assessment really of like, where does this cross the line of being just a vanity project for myself.
Yep.
And that moment for me was around the Torian Pro. Actually, it was like the Sunday heading in. It very much was like a bit of a existential crisis of like, am I just doing this because it's what I've always done and it's just and it's quote unquote fun, but when is it serious? Can this be a future? Like, is the sport ready? Because the thing is, like, as you say, like if you're not top 5, like, and it's, there's not as much money in other sports as people think. For example, if you're a golfer and you're not in the top 100, you're not really making a living, right? That's crazy for a sport with so much money. But the top guys have a lot of money, but no one else has much. But still, CrossFit's even smaller than that, so like there's not space for athletes that aren't the best. Whereas in football, there's plenty of space for athletes who are no names, first draft, just in the draft.
Yep.
But you need 18 players, or actually I don't even know if it's 18 or 20 players on a team. You can't just have Tom Brady. Do you know what I mean? So there's room enough for career jobs that aren't the best. CrossFit's not quite there yet, but that was kind of the decision point I was at. And for me, honestly, this year was just a good confirming that like I'm still on that track. Like, technically I'm old as far as the sport's concerned. I'm 30. We got guys winning who are 22 and girls competing who are 17. But I'm the best I've been. I'm getting better, and relative to the field, I'm still improving. So after winning the pro, it was like, okay, that's good. And it's not the whole picture still. Like, you can't claim that by itself, but then going to the games and backing it up with a great performance, and also just knowing to drastically bring that placing down from 16 to say 10 or 5. It's really only a couple of elements that need big improvements, as opposed to it's not as far away as the leaderboard might make it seem. That's the secret of the games too, right? Like the leaderboard doesn't tell the whole story. It's one thing to be actually there and seeing how you're stacking up with the guys, and that was a lot of confidence from that too. So that for me was a moment of like, okay, no, like I guess I'm now in that camp of one of the people who thinks I can make it. So I'm going to keep trying until either the sacrifice is too great or the possibility just reveals itself as not being likely.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I think like a top 10 or a top 5 finish is definitely doable next year or the year after for sure.
Yeah, okay. And I was going to dig a little bit into the physical stress and how that actually felt at the games, but going back a little bit mentally, so we're talking at the Torian, that Sunday, we're almost at existential crisis of like, why am I doing this, that vanity. What triggered that? Was it eating breakfast? Was it just about to go do the workout? Was it a conversation that triggered that made you go, oh damn, why am I doing this? And how did you, even in the moment, kind of go, no, I'm going to continue on and finish this Sunday? Because that would have been a hardcore task, right? Going into Sunday to then come out on top. And I think it was 1 point away with Jay, right? So it was like right there in terms of finishing it off. Yeah. What was that like? If you sort of explain that.
Kind of what set it off was just the mounting pressure of the weekend, right? Like you're under a lot of pressure and you want to do well and you have all these expectations of yourself, and expectations shift all the time. I went in there just thinking I just want a top 3 spot. I just want to go to the games. That's all I care about. And then I was actually found myself in first, or maybe I can't remember exactly what I was going into Sunday, but I was within shot of winning it. And that's when the pressure of that starts to add up, because then all of a sudden, even though that wasn't the goal, if you don't win, you feel like you've lost.
It's now the
like
goal.
you
It's now
in
the
your
goal,
hand
yeah.
and you lost it. So then you start thinking like, why am I? You're trying to get rid of that thinking and be like, no, the goal was just top 3. So it's all that kind of just the mounting pressure, I guess, of it all. And then the question was like, do I even enjoy this if I'm on the cusp of winning it potentially? And I'm not having fun. Like, is this that moment of like, why do I do this? That's where the crisis comes from. And I guess the solution was like, there is always moments of pain and pressure in goal setting in general, whether it's sport or otherwise. And you can't judge the experience based off the emotions in that moment, because that's the worst you're ever going to feel. Like, it's right before it breaks. It's the moment after when you know it was all worth it.
Exactly.
Or it wouldn't be worth it. That's the other side. If you did win, you felt still a bit like, this is not what I want to do. Then you know for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But it was a ton of relief and excitement and like pride afterwards. It was like, okay, no, this was all worth it. You just obviously feel terrible in that high pressure moment. That's the difference, right? Like, it's like whether you break work, or whether you can take the pressure, take the heat, or whether the iron snaps. That's the process of the forge, to use that metaphor. And so that's what kind of triggered it all. And what got me out of it, I suppose, was just like staying calm and realizing that realizing that that's just what I'm feeling in the moment. But all the days that I put in all those extra hours and stuff, like if it wasn't just vanity, because I would have probably not tried as hard if I was just doing it for show. It was the fact that I'd gotten to this point where I got the results that I needed to be in this position, because I obviously wanted to do it. And while I might be feeling right now that this is not what I want to do, that's the lie, because the other 364 days was focused,
the reality,
and that's the trick. And then also, I have got huge external motivators as well. That's the intrinsic. I've got huge external motivators as well. I said it in my interview. It's the fact that my family have inadvertently sacrificed by not seeing me as much, and Laurie picking up so much of the slack at home. And so for me to just kind of dip out the last moment because it's all too hard, and I don't find this fun after all. I'm out of here. It's like, maybe I don't have the luxury of finding it fun because everyone else has invested and believed in me, and I got to return that investment in a way. Like it is a job.
Sure.
You don't always love your job, and they backed me. And so if I don't come through, if I just quit on them, I'm not just quitting on myself because it's not fun anymore. I'm gonna take my ball, go home. It's not fun. You know what I mean? You got to banish that mindset a little bit of you make those decisions in the off season with a clear head, not in the moment when you're feeling frustrated. That's when you got to just sack up and be like, okay, and I got more than just myself relying on this, and that my family needs me to make this worth it. Otherwise, that year was just a waste for me to dip out the last moment and not perform. Or then you didn't just waste the weekend; you wasted the whole year. So,
and not just for yourself, for the family who was
correct.
also giving up all these
exactly
things.
what I'm saying, right? I had fun the whole time training while it was a little sacrifice for them, for me to just go, it's not fun anymore. It's like remember the Titans with Peter, it ain't fun anymore, is it? It's like, it's not. Sometimes winning, the win is fun, but getting there sometimes is obviously a struggle and hard. But that's what makes it all the more worth it. And that's the lesson, if you want, for my kids of it's easy to do something you like to get a result that you want. Where's the growth in that? It's hard to push through that moment. Honestly, it's that moment before 3, 2, 1, go, and people butterflies or something. That's the difference between the good and the great, is just who can handle that. It's not an easy feeling to sit there and be especially when you're already in the first place with a target on your back, and not fall apart.
Of course.
That's half the battle, is just not sucking on when push comes to shove, because there's no redo in live competition, obviously. So all those things, that's the beautiful part. That's what I remember is that feeling on Sunday morning. And I remember that even more so than the win on Sunday was just showing up and feeling like I can push through this, because that's truly that's the life-changing stuff. That's what makes you makes it all worth it.
Well, that's what allows that to happen in the end, right?
That's
coming first is not you doing the workout, because you've already
symptom
trained.
of it. Correct. Yes, that's what people forget too. A lot of pressure is put on the weekend, obviously, because you have to execute. If you screw up, you've lost it. But you don't just find fitness out of your bum.
Exactly.
It's just a report card of what you've done the whole year.
Exactly.
And so that should give you confidence if you've had if you've worked hard all year that it's just you're going to get what you deserve, and I mean that in a positive way. Which is good news if you've worked hard. And if you don't come through, that's just the good news is you got another year to work hard and go again. There's always next year, and that's what comes back down to, I guess, what we were saying earlier about is the sacrifice worth it or not. Obviously you got to reassess. I'll never forget being in the warm area in 2016 games where there was a team, and Tia and Shane had just finished, and Tia had not won. And they were obviously distraught. It was an all or nothing mentality, right? You go into champions go to win, they don't go to come second. And I remember chatting with Tia, and she was still a bit emotional, and she just was like, oh no, sorry, it was Shane talking to Mike, and Shane said to Mike, he's like, I just don't know if we can do this again. And it just sounds crazy because she nearly won. It was so close. Any logical thinking person would think what actually happened, which was, of course, they went again and she won. Right. But that's a logical thinking person. In the moment, they're in the depths of their of
course,
all the pressure, all the stress, thinking about running back into the fire again. It's funny when we watch them on TV and it looks like an easy win, but we don't know what she has to go through every day. How she has to push her body, the stress that she feels, the competition. Thinking, because she goes to competition, she's probably thinking like a lot of people are, what if I what if I'm not that good? What if this is the year that I do fall from grace? And everyone's like, oh, of course you're going to win, then I don't, you know? And she has to deal with all those insecurities, and she has to break through that and have that mindset of like, no, I know what I've done in training. I know I deserve this because I worked for it. It's not just going to happen to me because, you know, I really want it.
Sometimes it's actually harder when you are first place coming in
100%.
Because it's much easier for someone running up to get to the first and to remain the best. Once you become the best, you can get a little bit of mentality of like, oh, well, I'm already the best. Why do I have to train so hard? No, you got to double up.
And your only standard is to beat yourself because there's no one else to chase. You're the number one, so you're just trying to beat yourself every day and hope no one can catch you. You know, at the same rate you're improving, it's hard to be on top.
You almost have no comparison, right? Because you're like, you know, normally you might go, well, Justin's doing this, Matt's doing this, Rich is doing this.
Catch up.
You got to go, I'm doing this. Am I good enough to be able? Like, there's no comparison.
The worst workouts in CrossFit are the ones that you're supposed to be good at because you feel all the pressure, right? You got to execute, and so it is definitely hard to be the defending champ going in. And we know that in traditional sports, you know, repeat champs are so rare in any other sport. We've been spoiled in CrossFit recently with the last few years of this dynasty of Rich and then Matt and now Tia. Honestly, when those three are gone, you know, Justin will be interesting to watch. It'll be a rare thing to see repeat champs again after this. Honestly, I think it will be. It's unheard of in other sports, you know. And so it is that. Yeah, it is that mentality. That's what you do it for, really. And obviously, there's so much. It's a job, and you want to get paid, and the physical benefits and the winning and all that kind of thing. But just that mindset, like that's the drug, if you will. Like that's breaking through those those dark moments is what makes it all worth it. It's what you remember long after like the check's been cashed or long after like the titles have gone away. And as I say, like that was a moment where even in 2016, like they trained in the moment, really didn't know if they could do it again. Like maybe this is it. We'll call it there, which is crazy talk. But that's the point. It is crazy talk, but that's what happens. Like you're in. It's this kind of like temporary, situationally induced depression. Like you are not of your right mind, and you've just been crushed, and you don't know which way's up, and you know, you like your head's underwater kind of thing. And then, you know, what some people might quit, but champions will take a breath, reassess, come back stronger, use it for fuel. So that's...
And there's something to be said about, obviously, you know, in those moments, you move away from being just a rational human being to very much an emotional person. And I think people also forget, you know, Tia, yes, she came back and was able to win now for a continued period, but she would have had a massive team around her to also get her in the right mentality and everything. You know, everyone you see in the CrossFit Games or in many sports, it's not just an individual pursuit, right? Even if there is an individual result, the community and the team that's behind them to allow them to come back and, you know, believe, yes, I can come back is such a big thing.
100%. You do. You need an outside perspective. That's why how coaches make their money. You know, like that is the point of having someone who's logical and reasonable, who can like talk you off the ledge. And yeah, every athlete talks about having their team, having their people, and I mean, even in Rich's case, like you know, it's funny because Rich is kind of like the leader. Like there's no one around Rich who's like that he quote looks up to. And I don't mean that as in there's no one he respects or anything, but like most people in a room would look to Rich to see like, oh, what's the plan? Like, what are we going to do next? But Rich's external factor comes from his faith. That's what brings him back. You know, in 2010 when he was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I came second. I suck. Blah blah. I'm sure there was people in his life who were giving him advice, but what really pulled him back was being like, this is like something that you've been given. You're not good at this because you're good. You're good at this because it's a gift you've been given. That's what he believes. That's what I believe too. That's my faith. Is that this is a gift that's been given to me, and so it's out of respect, out of good faith. I have to, you know, use it. I can't squander this gift. It's and you know. That's what pulls.
Not pursuit.
Yeah, it is. It is like to reject a gift is obviously not. It's not respectful, and so it does give you that. It gives me definitely, and I know it gives Rich that out. So that's the extrinsic, I guess, like perspective for us too. Of like when you're in the depths of it all, and you're feeling like, you know, I suck or whatever. You know, all those moments. That's when you're like, you know what, like. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for my family. I'm doing it to glorify God. I'm doing it because it's a gift I've been given, and I need to make the most of it, because that's the definition of purpose. Like, what else is there? You know, you don't want to just live a life of like meaningless like anecdotes, a bunch of anecdotes
Exactly,
together. Anecdotes are great. Like life is full of the small moments, right? Like, but you want like a good storyline to link it all together. You need some purpose, something that you're working towards.
You need a thread to be able to chain them all together.
Like any good TV show, like you have all the hijinks happen episode to episode, but what makes it great is that constant thread that even if you don't notice it, day to day, you feel like the ship's moving in a direction, that it has a course. We're going somewhere. You might not even reach the destination. It just feels good to be on the path. To have an aim. It doesn't feel good to be aimless.
Yep.
And that's kind of that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I've seen this in many other places, almost, in the armed forces, individuals, when they move away from the armed forces or in police or in fire services, moving away from a mission, all of a sudden you're kind of lost, right? So that can be a little bit difficult. I've got to ask this question because it's been in my mind now for like the last 15 minutes. We talked about butterflies, we talked about pressure, right? We talked about things that you're good at. So I want to rewind you back to the CrossFit Games this year at the max snatch. So you were down to the final 2, right? And I think the weight was 305 that you had to kind of lift. We talked a little bit about the mentality, of winning the Torian Pro. What was your mentality there? Because you didn't end up winning that particular event, but you were right up there in the top 2, and you've been known now for a little while as the strongest man in CrossFit, and that was for the total that you did in 2018, I believe. What was your mindset like then? Because we were watching this on video, right, on stream, and you two seemed just really cool, calm, and collected. What was your mindset going through when you were going up for that 305? Like, for you, was it like, I'm going to get this, or I have no idea how I'm going to get this, given this dude is absolutely crushing these snatches?
Yeah. Early on in that event, it was all those stresses, and like I was like, okay, like you don't want to like screw this up, because the snatch is very like there's an accuracy element to it. Like you can just have a bad lift and miss it, even though you could have lifted it. So you don't want to screw up and be out early, and so there's all that pressure of like, okay, I have this potential in this event, like don't screw this up, like, execute well. And when it got down to when it was just me, Pat, and Guy, that's when it felt like the confidence was like really high. I was like, okay, a minimum finish here is a third. Like, this is good. Pat's having a screamer. It was awesome. It was so cool to watch him. Like, he was just like so ecstatic. He was hitting these weights. Like, he was like bubbly, and it was cool. Yep. And then I was like, I'm pretty sure I can out snatch Pat here. Like, I can always make a mistake, but I think I've got him. And Guy was looking super strong, and I was like, a small part of me thought like, look, I just don't think I can beat him in this. Like, mindset's important, like belief and stuff, but like you got to be a realist. Like you can't just you can't just create fantasy. Like, this kid's obviously moving incredibly well, but I thought, you know what, like, you don't know what's going to happen. He might just screw up. He might just have a mistake, have a bad lift, and so you got to stay in the game to make sure that you're, the Stephen Bradbury, right? Like, he wouldn't have won if he wasn't there. If he just quit, he would have, because they got off the ground pretty quick. Like, the guys crossed the line again after they fell over relatively quick. Like, if he wasn't right there, he would have still come.
He would have still come last, exactly.
Yeah. So it was that mentality of like, you got to be in it to win it, and so the 300 was like awesome, because it was cool to hit. It's such a benchmark number in CrossFit for the snatch. So it was cool to hit that in front of a crowd, like live. Like, it's one thing to hit it in your gym, another thing to hit it like after 8 or whatever we did it, like 11 events, and after in front of everyone, and with the pressure of the setup. You can't just lift when you want to. It's all those little factors. So it was cool, like validation, if you will. And then the 305. It was like a bit of the mentality was like calm and cool, because I thought, like, I can only do what I can do. Like, just go out there and give it your best. And at this point now, it was like the smallest, the 1% off can make, which is what it was. It was just that, like, when I look back at the lift, and the reason I gave it 3 cracks was because it didn't feel that heavy, but it was just like, it's a lift of timing, and I just wasn't quite quick enough under it, or I just didn't have quite enough pull, or it was just all little 1%. It's like the body just didn't have enough left after all the events, and after the 300, it was just like 1% off. Probably would have gotten it if I was fresher or whatever. But so that was going up to the bar was like, cool and calm, because I was like, look, I can only do what I can do, and like I either have this in the tank, I can rip it out. Like, by then I was pretty confident the technique and the accuracy and all those little factors were dialed in. I was like, this is pretty, like, there's not going to be any more screwing up at this point. I don't think, not for me, because I felt very polished and like just rehearsed, if you will. So it was just a matter of like, okay, I either have this or I don't. Like, give it your best, but if it misses, oh well, like, can't be disappointed. It's just all I had. And then obviously Guy was. And that's the thing, like, when he hit the 305, it was like, okay, it was kind of like a good good for me mentally because I was like, look, if I'd hit the 305 somehow, he would have hit 310. Look how easy it went up. And he would have hit 315. He would have hit 320. Like I literally couldn't have rolled with him forever. So it was like, okay, fair's fair. Like got my moment, got to hit 300. And it was Guy's event, and that's just how it is. So it was from that single platform onwards. It got calmer and calmer of like, okay, all the jitters are out. The technique feels good. You only need to psych up for like that one instantaneous moment of pull. Like you don't need to be fired up walking up to the bar. And different people have different styles. Some people like to get into it, but it was pretty much just like, if you have it, you have it. There's no, like, you don't have to worry about executing anymore. The first few bars were very much like that, like, don't screw up. If the heart rate had been going then, it probably would have been a lot higher. But like my heart rate towards the end was low because it was like, look, just you have it or you don't. Like it's not, it got really cool at that point. It was like, okay, just soak it up and just enjoy
the moment.
Yeah, just enjoy the moment. Exactly.
How do you go about as well? Because this is something I was always interested as well. You do so many workouts, right? Day on day on day. What, by the tail end of, like, say, by the third day or whatnot, how are you performing comparatively to how you would in normal training, right? Like, percentage wise, like, are you at 85% of what you could do in a normal session? So if you pulled event 14 and just did it on your own on a random Sunday, would you say you'd be 20% better than what you would just because of how down and tired everyone is because of all the CrossFit Games? Or is it that it's almost on par because just the energy of the event and the people and everything kind of brings you up?
It's a funny one because, like, honestly, if I was to do any of the games workouts like on my own in the gym now, even if I was fresh and feeling great, I probably still wouldn't go as hard because you just kind of can't be bothered on it. I know that sounds bad, but like it's the reason why, for me personally, I'm so much better in like at the pro or at the games than I am in the open. Because even though it matters, of course, like it's important, you just, like for me anyway, it's different for different people, but for me, I just can't quite get into the mindset of like we're going here, because it's like, I mean, especially because the open, you don't have to be the best to get to the next stage. But if I was retesting a workout, it's kind of like you almost don't want to completely crush it because then it doesn't really count. Like I love retesting workouts and PBing them and stuff from improving both physically but also like mentality wise and having better transitions and all the smart things that go into competing. Like practicing a workout is still practice, even though there's fitness involved. But I think the games is for most people, at least, I mean, definitely for the guys who do well at the games, it's their peak performance because of it's game time, it counts, the mentality's there, the crowd honestly helps so much. Like it's, we do what we do all year round, like on our own, suffering in silence. It's so much more exhilarating to get to show that off and have people like appreciate 100%. Like, oh, you did work harder, that's amazing, clapping and stuff. It's like wow, like someone does appreciate this work. We know that, that people do, but like it's just the emotion, right? It's raw, it's very primal. It's like, someone claps, you just feel good. Like it's just our primate behavior, I guess, the social behavior. And so the crowd is a big deal. And so to retest workouts at home, it's like almost like, you feel better, but like for me personally, I find it hard to really, workouts that PB, if I tested the workouts maybe in a year from now when I'm a lot fitter, I would PB almost by default, but I almost felt like the effort wouldn't be the same. Even on my best day, trying my hardest, like really getting in the mindset, if you put a crowd there and say it's for points, there's just this untapped, this hidden seventh gear that's like inaccessible until that moment. You're actually there. Even when you're in training and you think you're like, you think you're in gear 7, well then in competition there'll be a gear 8. Yeah, there'll be something there's else. Always more. It's like just the law of competition, I guess. And that can happen the reverse, where people can be like a home gym hero and then fold from the pressure. That happens all the time. But the great athletes, and not to say I'm great, but definitely I'm in the camp of like the live competition. There's just no comparison. And so the retesting thing is it's a funny one too, because some events just don't even require that much effort. Like if I was to retest the deadlift freestanding handstand push-up one, I'd probably destroy it because I've just been practicing that movement more and just better at it. And there's so much less to that workout fitness-wise than there is execution and skill-wise. So, different things come in different categories, I suppose. Yeah.
So obviously you, looking ahead, you are going to continue to try and go to CrossFit. Yes. You're talking about trying to get top 5. Obviously, it's going to be a big ask and it's going to require a lot of effort. How have you had those conversations both with, Laura, your partner, maybe the kids? How have you kind of explained to them, over the next year, I'm going to go again. is it going to need more time to train? Like what are sort of those conversations you're having, and what are you personally looking to do to kind of reach that top 5?
The conversation was pretty straightforward with Laurie, actually. Like, she was obviously super proud, and we're both on the same page, as in that we both agreed that was a validation that we're on the right path, that like this really is what I should be doing, and so that was easy as. And then as far as like, I mean, I don't think the hard part is, I guess, it's the hard part and the easy part. The kids are getting older, and so they kind of like, they understand a bit more. They want me around and don't want me to disappear as much into the shed. But at the same time, they're also older in that they kind of stand it more and get it, and like love to come in and interact and stuff. And I guess it just comes down to being more mindful of the balance, like really making an effort to be with them when I'm with them, and give them an enriching experience, like not just sit on the couch and hang out while they play, but like actually let's go do something, let's be proactive, let's go to the pool, let's go to the park or whatever, like make the time more quality. And then training wise, honestly, the funny thing is, like, it's not that's kind of the misconception, I suppose, of like, okay, to get better, you got to train more. But it's actually it's the kind of training. So obviously, I got to put a lot more effort into the endurance, because as you said before, like training week, like there's only so much wick to burn in the candle, if you will, and so burn more of it and push harder in the pieces that I need to get the most improvement in, to see a huge improvement in the leaderboard. Like take that 36th swim of mine and make it a 10th. That'd be a bit crazy, but let's say a 15th. You've just gained like the equivalent points of improving like 5 other events by a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So it's a huge swing. And then it's also just another year of training, right? Like it all accumulates. So like the trick is to get better relative to the field, obviously. Like everyone improves, but to get better relative to the field, which is where the kind of training comes in. Like I said, like hitting the right movement, you're training the weaknesses, and so you're improving your average compared to the field. But you don't necessarily need to go. It'd just be more purposeful in the training, training specific things like for example that Echo Bike snatch workout. I found that really hard to stay unbroken. I managed to, mostly because of the crowd, as we talked about before. But for a person who you'd think would be good at that workout, like moving a light bar and being big on a bike, I really struggled endurance-wise to like hold those reps and keep it fast. And so I'm like, okay, so in training now, there's certain times when like singles make sense, but also like, okay, I might get a better score if I do singles, but I should do this workout touch and go. Like, make myself hurt like that, because that's what I want to get more comfortable with. So when the time counts, when it's all or nothing, a 4-minute workout, I can go. And then obviously just focusing more on endurance training and not worrying about strength as much, and even if I suffer a little bit, if I only came 4th in the snatch event, I'd improve the swim by like 20 places. Like,
just makes a whole world difference.
The math just adds up, right? That's where you got to put your ego aside, not be the strong guy anymore, but also not be the worst swimmer at CrossFit. So
exactly.
The last place runner. So little things like that, you got to make that decision. So the training doesn't necessarily change much macro. It's just that within the session, the focuses. Macro, there's a little bit of change in the balance, like where you're devoting your time, a bit more endurance, a little bit less like lifting. But even just in the micro session, even like just if it was the same workout I would have hit today that I would have hit last year, the way I would treat the workout is a little different now, and just being smart with, like for example, like workouts that have machines in it. Like maybe I shouldn't have echo biked as fast in that workout and tried to snatch quicker, but I just assumed as a big athlete make my money on the bike. But which does make sense to a certain degree, but it doesn't necessarily pan out that way. Like I should have maybe biked a bit slower, like the small guy pace, but then also being able to move the bar more like a small guy with faster range of motion could. So things like that in my own training, going into workouts, being like, okay, what's my ego say to do here? I'll send this bike and I'll rip it unbroken on this or whatever. Or what's the smart thing to do? Like go much slower here and then try to push the pace somewhere else. And just so there's all that minutia that goes into it, I suppose, that adds up to executing better on the day and getting
of course
turning a few seconds. Even like for example, like probably I didn't think I did, but I probably pulled up by, let's say, 1 second total on that sandbag carry rope climb workout. Like didn't really keep the pedal down right to the limit. And then the next heat, he didn't even know my time because he was just racing Vellner. But Vikowski beat my time by literally, I think it was like 0.23 seconds.
Exactly.
Like chip timing, right? So that could have been a second. So that's more money. That's like a lot more points, like 5 or 6 points just in one event. But I pulled up because I was crushing my heat.
Yeah. So you were
I thought
like,
I was safe, and it wasn't even like Brent saw my time and tried to beat me, but he was racing Vellner, who was faster, and so he just accidentally beat me, and that could have been my
not by
second.
going for the time, but
it could have been.
the competition.
But I didn't push, whereas Vukowski had someone to push against, so he was sending it right to the line. So little things like that, right? Like, and you learn that lesson. I feel like every competitor learns that lesson every time. Like, you never really learn that lesson, like
until it happens. And
even when it happens,
tell
you still don't really learn it. Like you should never pull up early, but you can definitely learn from it. But that's like a constant pursuit. The idea of like, you're not just racing your heat. Like, you kind of need that reminder. Like, virtually every event, people need that reminder.
And in that moment, in the moment when you're in the pain cave, right? You're into the storm. You're in that moment where it's just everything's hard, right? Whether it's 2/3 through the workout, 3/4 through the workout, and everything's screaming at you to stop. In a scale, I'd say between like really animalistic, where you're just like really primal and try to just get this done, or technical, where does your mind go to? How do you kind of really pull yourself in those really hard moments?
It depends on the workout. Like my best example for that was probably the wall walk thruster. Like that for me was like,
that sounded horrible.
That was a moment of like really, like when people ask like, how do you keep going in the dark, in the bad moments, whatever, like I don't really know. Honestly, that workout was mostly just like shame of like, if you stop, you're a disgrace. That's pretty much all that kept me going, because I was motivation, enjoyment, like all of that was out the window. Like the technique was fine in that workout. It wasn't necessarily technically very hard, but like your mind scrambling of like, how the heck can I make this easier somehow? But like nothing really works. Like it just sucks. And you're just like trying to keep your rest breaks short, but like there's nothing really to stop you from resting like 15 seconds instead of 10. Like you just, the rest blows out. Like everything's just, the wheels just falling off, and like a little bit of confidence looking left and right and seeing other guys just as effed, just as messed. But really what kept me going then was just like, the shame of like, don't just stop. Everyone's watching. Like you got to finish. Like it won't, if you get time capped, it'll be bad, and the work won't get done if you just look at it. Like you have to do it. Like you just gotta, like, that's when you do. It's that saying of like, you don't rise to your competition, you fall to your training. And that's where that was. I just fell, and the safety net of my training caught me of like, I've done some pretty gross work. I've done a lot of training workouts that have like really just pushed me over the edge, to the point where I've said like, oh, I don't care anymore, I'm just going to plod through this. And so I just had that mentality. I could just fall back to that of like, okay, I don't care anymore, just plod through this. And in the end, it wasn't a terrible finish. It was like 20 seconds or something, like mid-pack. Honestly, much better than I thought I was going to do on that workout, because the wall walk really crushes me. And it was like, okay, like I kind of salvaged it. Like, and everyone else obviously was feeling very similar, with a few notable exceptions of guys who crushed it. But everyone else was probably feeling pretty similar, hence why my score wasn't that bad. And that's where you like, that, there's moments of greatness where you like in the Snatch assault bag workout, the moment was like, come on, like you can do this. Like you're in the live competition. You're gonna regret it if you drop it. Like go unbroken. Like be a hero if you will. I didn't really care about the finish per se, because I could see most of the field was ahead of me anyway. It was just like personal, like go hard, don't regret this. And then so that those are those moments that the crowd brings. But then on the flip side of that, the wall walk one was more a moment of like just like relying on all the hard work you've done the whole year, falling back on that training of just like, I'd never quit a training workout. Like I've literally, to my memory, and this is just a bit of a stubbornness thing, I guess, of mine, unless I was like properly sick or like something went wrong, I've never just stopped a workout because like it wasn't going well. Like especially if it sucked, I was like, just finish it off like a skill thing. Like you're sucking at this, or you're really not doing well, but just finish it because it's still good practice. You know what I mean? Like screw the workout element of it now, just finish it for practice. And so I've never like just quit a workout. And that I could fall back to that mentality of like, don't quit. Like quitting is not even an option. Like you just have to do this. You have to. Why do you have to? I can't tell you. I just have to.
It's just like that characteristic.
Exactly. So that's what it is. And like, so when people ask that question of like what keeps you going, I don't really have an answer. It's different. The answers can be different, and it depends on context, depends on the workout, depends on how you're feeling, depends on so many things. But the short answer, I guess, is I don't really know. It's just a bit intrinsic. But also, it's a learned skill. You just teach it to yourself. Like I said, for the wall work one, it was just the fact that like my experience, my habits were to just plod through and get it done because there's no other option.
Yep.
And then when I got close to the end, it was like, oh man, like the time, beat the time cap, just get under the time cap, don't regret it. So I started pushing a little harder, but that's just all you need really, is to get through like that one bad moment. Honestly, I've done workouts before where that moment of quitting is like and the walk one was pretty close, where every moment for 20 minutes was that moment of I want to quit. Like that's a bad place to be in, right? That's extreme. Yeah. But that's when you just fall back on your habit, what you've practiced the most.
Yeah, it's the practice, grit that you've done, whether it's training and not giving up or in anything else in life. I was like, okay, no, I've done this a couple of times before. Just keep going, even if it's going to suck.
And members here in the class ask me that all the time. I'm like, oh, how do you just not quit? Like, oh, in the middle of that workout, I just gave up. I couldn't hit the time cap. Like, how do you not quit? I'm like, well, you are currently doing that thing, which is you just turn up and keep going. Like, you are currently practicing not quitting. Like, yeah, you might have quit today, but you probably got a little bit further than you would have gotten last week. And so it can be a learned skill. You just give yourself the time to let your body learn how to not quit, and before you know it, you're not. And then as you get fitter, it gets easier not to quit too, because back to what we were saying before about the runners and stuff, like when you're good at something, it's obviously easier to do it, like as in physically easier, so you don't feel like quitting as much. So all those things just keep adding up. You just got to stay in the fight. I think people they want the secret, they want the answer, but the answer is time. Like I sucked at CrossFit for a long time before I was good. Like people forget that. Most of the games athletes, they sucked before they were good. People forget that. They want to know, how do you get good? Like you're so good. What was your secret? It's like the secret was a lot of years of sucking. The secret was 10 years of not being good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and it's like you'll find the oddities in there. Like Justin's young. Matt obviously came from an Olympic background, but even then, there's years of work they've been putting in to get to the point.
Tia every now and then shares some videos of her. Like, she's an Olympian in weightlifting, and her weightlifting sucked when she started. She puts these videos up and says, oh my God, what is that? And like Fraser even talks about it. He said when he first started CrossFit, he was so unfit. He's like, I was so fat, couldn't run. He's like, I was just a weightlifter. He's like, I'm trying to do this like running kettlebell swing workout, and I'm just dying. And and it's like, like everyone, no matter how good they were at something, when they started CrossFit, they still sucked. And Justin, like, he's great, he's young and good, but he also started very, very young.
Yeah, exactly.
So when he was like 17, he sucked. Do you know what I mean? So he's just put that time in super early. Like, so now he's good at 22 because he already put the 5 years in.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? He just found it earlier, right? Which is luck, but that's how it works in every sport. Like, all the best weightlifters, all the best footballers, they all start really young. Like, it's a good thing for CrossFit that we're getting to the point where people can start young, and 10 years later, the sport's still there for them to be good at it now.
Oh, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they started when they were 12 and now they're 22 and they're great. Well, if CrossFit had fallen over after 5 years, they wouldn't have that chance. So it's great for the sport that we have a generation coming through. We need that. Every sport needs that.
For sure. No, I recall this is an AFL thing. I used to go watch at the Springwood Lions. Alex Sexton used to play there for the Springwood team, and he was my age, basically at the same time. And I used to kick the footy around the time that they'd have like the half time and the quarter time. I'd be kicking the footy better than him, and I was like, oh, look at this guy. Like, he's still coming up, and obviously now he used to play for the Gold Coast Suns. I'm not sure where he's playing now. But he just become a beast, right? But everyone's going to begin somewhere, and you think, oh yeah, like at that time. But it's the continued effort for a long time that then equals the results that then people forget, oh yeah, all this came through from this beginning.
That's right.
Got a final question for you, Royce, and then I'll let you go. And it's all around character. So we talked about grit, we talked about the resiliency aspect and everything else. What do you think, and you're a great person for debriefing. I think people probably would have gotten out from a lot of this podcast that you'd like to debrief things really, really well. Almost to the technical nth degree. From a characteristic perspective, what's probably the one or two things that you want to pass on to people like your kids or young people coming up in the CrossFit community that's going to serve them the best, right? Like, if you're kind of sharing things and debriefing with your kids on the things that you've learned the experience, what are the one or two characteristics you say, yeah, these are the main things you just really need to take away from this?
Probably the two biggest lessons that I've learned in life, if it was like the two things I would tell myself at like 10 years old kind of thing, my little wisdom, my fortune cookie, is one is like, it's the whole, it's a classic trope, but it's so accurate of like not caring what other people think. And I think, like, I mean, my personal belief is that that's actually not possible. Like, I think even the person who talks a big game about not caring what people think, like, everyone truly cares what other people think. It's a matter of how much do you care what they think, or how many people do you care what they think. But like anything, the resilience to their opinions can be trained. Like if you're someone who really worries about what people think about them, it's okay. You can like any skill, you can learn to not care as much, or at least not let it affect your decisions. That doesn't mean like no one likes to be hated. Do you know what I mean? It's like I think you can find the most like self-involved person or whatever, and if you like told them that like so and so said this about you or whatever, that'd probably still be a pain. Like they'd probably they feel like
still something.
If you're human, you feel it, right? So like no one's ever going to get to the point where you don't care what anyone thinks, but you gotta get to the point where you can be happy anyway, and that's a learned skill. That's what I tell my kids and tell myself, that like you can teach yourself to not be a slave to that, like to not be to feel that anxiety, I guess. And then the second thing is which kind of ties into that is like especially when we had kids and they were young, that you just get into the talk of this and you're reading the books and stuff, and there's so much and even like you talk to any psychologist, and like so much like talking about trauma, right, from a perspective of like healing people's traumas. There's so much talk about childhood and how it shapes you and all these kinds of, and people, we always think about that, but like I said, I was a pretty shy kid, and I was very self-conscious, and I wasn't very outgoing, or not until I really got to know people in my close group, whatever. And like 20 years ago when I was a kid, I could never imagine standing in front of a group and talking, like giving a brief for a class, but like that's just, that level of public speaking would like trigger me, right? And but the fact is, like, yes, there's so many things that help. Like Laurie and I do so many conscious things for our kids to build their self-esteem and gives them a good start. But no matter how messed up your childhood is, or anything really, once you're a free-thinking, mature adult, like when you're at a certain age, and it might be 10 if you grow up fast, it might be 25, but there's a point when you can just literally say, I can be different tomorrow. Yep. Like there's nothing stopping that. Like you can be like really shy, like I hate public speaking, whatever, and you can just be like, well, tomorrow I'm not gonna be, and it might not happen tomorrow. But the fact is, like, when you realize the empowering idea of like you can change anything, like just because you grew up in a certain way, or like no one ever told you good job, and so you have bad self-esteem or whatever. Well, I mean, from tomorrow you can start being like, I have good self-esteem. Like I'm actually, you can turn your life. You can go from being like an immature person to a mature person. Like, and I'm not talking about like faking it kind of thing. I'm talking about like you can change what your actions, right? You might still be like an introverted, shy person, but you can be an introverted, shy person who's happy talking in front of crowds, because you can change behavior like literally overnight. Like we are human beings that have a powerful conscious mind. No other animal has what we have.
Exactly.
No other animal can think for themselves. No other animal has ever reasoned, I think, therefore I am, right? That's Descartes. That's pure. Like we are unique in all the world for having that, and that power is like you can turn anything around, like literally whenever you feel like it. Right. The trick is getting yourself to feel like it. Right. That's the battle, and that's where that's where people suffer, and that's why mental health is a big deal. Like getting yourself to the point where you can believe that about yourself. That is what professionals are so important for, like health professionals. But like I that's the two things I would tell my younger self, which is like you can be anyone you want tomorrow, and you can learn to not care as much what people think about you. Because that's good advice when people say that, like don't care what other people think about you, or Coco Chanel, other people's opinions of you are none of your business. But it's hard to believe that. Like it is good advice, but you kind of, and then you feel like if I still care what people think about me, so I must be failing at this. Like but anything can be learned. Any skill, it's a skill. You can train yourself to not care as much, and then you'll be free. Then you'll be free to really like do the things you want to do and not care what people think about you. But that, and the dangerous part of that is like the people who care about you might have good advice. Like still take their advice. Like what people think about you, you gotta make sure if it's good advice, don't ignore it. Don't be what's the word, like bullheaded or whatever. Like there's so much, like some of the greatest life lessons and like things that shaped me came from other people. Obviously all the best things should come from other people, but you're also in control of who's around you too, so that's important.
Yeah, no, definitely. The greatest thing around that I've heard is it's not all, it's and. A lot of people are like, I'm either this, I'm really shy, or I'm going to be really, really confident. No, you can be shy and you can be confident when you're speaking in front of people. I think it's the mentality that it's got to be one or the other, right? No, a lot of people who you see, whether it's, you know, people right at the top of CrossFit or in AFL or in whatever you want to think about, dude, they're going through all this stuff as well. Like, you just don't see it, right?
Yeah.
I think I only recently found out, it was, I think Osher, you know, does, you know, Bachelorette and stuff like that.
On the Idol,
just recently I saw that on SBS and he was like, you know, actually I've been battling with mental health issues and obsessive disorder and stuff like that. And you go, dude, everybody actually is still pushing, and it's not the awe. It's not like all of a sudden they're really good and they're really bad. No, everyone's in it. Everyone's got some issues. Everyone's still going through some trauma, as you say. But it's okay. You might have experienced it, and what are you going to do about it to actually move you forward?
And like, you know, like the public speaking thing is a good example because I feel like it's a pretty common fear.
Yeah.
And even outgoing people, you know, in a certain circumstance, don't want to be in front of a crowd. You know, when it's not organic and awkward, like everyone looks at you in a room or whatever. It's a bit of a nightmare for most people. But that's the thing, as you say, you don't have to be, I'm an introverted person. I prefer one-on-one. I don't like talking in crowds. Well, tomorrow you're going to be someone who loves it. It's like, no. It's about the mindset. It's, well, no, tomorrow you're still that person, but who can talk in front of crowds. You can do it. You hate it, you don't like it, whatever, but you can still nail it and then go home and be the introvert you want to be. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's, as you say, it's an and. Like, it's a behavior. Talking in front of people doesn't have to be a way of life. Like, now I'm a Tony Robbins. It's like, no, you can still be the introverted shy, like hate crowds or whatever. But I can do it. Like it's a behavior. Like I can open a pickle jar. I can talk in front of people. Like it's just an action that I can do, and anyone can be like that. And you know, someone and the opposite, someone who's like super extroverted. Like, you know, the 2-week quarantine thing. Like, I can't be alone with my thoughts. I can't. You know, it gives me anxiety. I have to be around.
Exactly.
No, you can be someone who is like thrives on the crowd. But like brushing your teeth, you can just walk in a room and be alone. Like, it's an action. Like, you can survive it. Like. And that's, you know, truly that's true. Our minds are insanely powerful in that way. As I said, we're like unique in all the world for having this brain that's like almost impossible to even, like, where do you even look at an MRI where a thought is stored? Like, it's so out of this world. Like, our consciousness, it's so you know, supernatural, if you will, that it's like, don't underestimate the power of that. You can, and that's when you're a kid. You just fall prey to like the group think, you know, like it's like in school, like, can you believe that we once thought there's such a thing as cool and uncool? And when's the last time you saw a cool group on the street in the city?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, it's such a weird concept. Like, you like live your whole life as a kid, and it leads to literal mental health disorders. Thinking about whether you're in the right group, it's like those groups don't even exist in the real world.
Exactly.
Every parent is uncool in your mind, even though. But like, so that defeats the whole purpose of your group think. If like, you're going to grow up to be uncool anyway, what does it matter? So, but we live by that, and like, we're just fine because, you know, as adults we laugh and go, oh yeah, kids are just being kids, you know, they're stupid.
But in the moment,
but like, people still have mental health issues
because of
from the 4 years of high school they were in a group. It's like, okay, it's over. Who gives a crap? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be embarrassed about that. Like, it's done. So it's so not to trivialize these issues. But if you can just remember that it's that easy, that hopefully that gives you like it just gives you that light at the tunnel, so now you can like walk down the tunnel. Exactly. It might not be an easy way to get. It might not be an easy path, but if you never think there's light, you're not gonna. Right, but the light is like, it is that easy. But it's like the overnight success thing, right? Like, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. It might take you 10 years to flick the switch, but there is a light switch up there that when you flick it, you just realize, like, it's that simple. This was all a lot of crap in my mind, like keeping me captive. And you can turn it off like with a flick of the switch. You should get to that switch though.
There's still the effort to get to it.
You might need some help for that. You know what I mean? Like, you might need some professional help for that if it was bad trauma. Like, there's some messed up there. I can't speak. I'm not been through anything crazy. You know, sexual assault, all kinds of. There can be some really bad trauma, but the light switch is there. Like, we know this. Our brain is that powerful. Like, you just got to get there somehow. So get some help, whatever. And so that's what I want my kids to know. Like, nothing that crazy. I hope they don't go through any trauma. But I want them to know, like, any little minor thing, like any stupid thing. Oh, I whipped my pants at school one day when I was 10. It still haunts me. It's like, just flick the switch. You could get to the switch first. Not that easy. But it's so.
But there
easy.
is a switch.
But like, it's a switch. Literally, like, it can be undone. So it's not real anymore. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. Like, it lives in our minds are so good at making things real. Like, you imagine a birthday cake, it's real in your head.
Oh, of course.
But it doesn't actually exist. And like, and so anything in the past, it's not real anymore. It didn't really happen. Like, it happened, but it's like it's not happening. So why is your body reacting like it is? Like you're making it real. Like,
Oh,
just turn it off.
100%.
Just turn the light off.
It's all us creating the idea of the reality that we see. The actual reality, the base reality, biology, scientifically, it's a little bit different, but it's just what the human mind puts into play.
Correct, and that's how beautifully powerful the human mind is. Do you think dogs think about what they did 3 years ago and get embarrassed? You know what I mean? Like, no, their memory is limited to things that are good or bad as far as survival and reward. We have the unique ability to like do that to ourselves.
Exactly.
But it also means we can undo it to ourselves, which is the beautiful part. So that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing I want my kids to know, is that you can learn to shape. You can learn resilience. Resilience can be learned. You don't have to be good at it.
Yep.
You don't have to be good at shaking things off. You can learn to, and you can literally create your reality. Like, you can change. You can flip the switch on anything, good and bad.
Yep. Yeah. Look, Royce, we'll leave it at that. Where can people find you? What's the best place if people want to sort of contact you or see what you're up to?
It's my Instagram.
Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram.
Cool.
Whatever slash, I don't know. No, at Royce, ROYCEY _BOY.
Cool. I'll put the link anyways down below anyways for most of these things. Royce, look, appreciate your time, man. It did go a lot longer than I thought, which was very good. There's lots of questions still in my mind that I wanted to ask you, but I'm like, okay, that might be a later or something I'll ask you personally later on.
Yep.
But look, appreciate it, man, for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.